Amazing. Gracias por estar aquí. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the Latino Committee for having this amazing event. And thank you to the panelists. Really happy to be here. I've been asked to kind of help guide and also be a panelist, so bear with me while I screw up both of those things. But yeah, let's jump right in. I mean, this is about, the goal of this panel is how do you make a film beyond the system? And in order to talk about that and to really get into the weeds of that, let's first define what is a project beyond the system. And I think for the purposes of this panel, a project beyond the system is anything that, were it to be done through the usual industry steps, it would either take forever to get done or worse, never get done. And yet these films exist. So how do you go about making one, right? And what does that mean? It could be a film that, for example, isn't backed by a studio, but was financed through indie mechanisms like getting cast, doing pre-sales, tapping into tax credits. It could also be a film that was done entirely through equity, through private equity, where you just get investors. It's usually a smaller film, more under the radar, but you just get the money and you say, fuck it, we're gonna make this movie no matter what. That could also happen. It could also be a bigger film that didn't fit the theatrical climate of the time and therefore had to be financed or distributed through less conventional ways. All of those films are represented here today. And what unites those films is that they were done despite the system. And what also unites them is that they're successful in the most important way that any film beyond the system can be, and that's that they represent the voices of these directors, and that, again, they exist. So let's jump in. If everyone could maybe start with telling us one project they've done that they consider beyond the system, and one tip that they learned while making this film or project that they can throw right now out to a filmmaker who's trying to get a jump start on their project. Patricia, let's start with you.
Hola, hi everyone. Thank you for being here. It always makes me really happy this day, and the fact that we're here all trying to make it happen for Latinos. One day this will not happen because we will not need to do that anymore. Okay, I'm going to tell the story of La Misma Luna, which is always the story I tell. I'm sorry if you guys have heard it before. But it is a good story because it is a movie that was made despite, as you say, and I do think that the biggest success is just to make it. So I was very lucky to have partnered with my writer, who I believe is in the audience, but I always talk about her, not because she's here. And she supported me. And this is very important because we actually found a studio who was going to finance the movie. And then they started, basically, this is before streaming, when going straight to video was a bad thing. And when I was about to make my first movie with a studio, I said, where do we say that it's going to go theatrical? Say, oh no, we're not going to put it anywhere in the contract. And I'm like, what do you mean? No, if we don't like it, go straight to video. So I said, okay, let's at least put like a festival window. Let's do that, so I can watch it on the screen once. And they said no. So I made the very hard decision of walking away from my first movie studio deal and decided to go independent so I can retain, the ability to have this movie have a nice life and, be, what I wanted it to be. And the writer, Ligia Villalobos, did not take the money and came with me. And, we actually were able to keep the actor, keep the actress, Kate del Castillo. I got money from Mexico, from IMCINE. Whoever is from another country is very lucky because you can always go to your country and they always are very helpful, I feel, in terms of, supporting us. I got money from the Mexican Film Institute, half of the financing, the other half, I got it equity US money, which also very rare. No American-Mexican co-productions back then, not for a Spanish language movie about a little boy crossing the border. I made the movie for 1.5. I kept my starting date, and I cast Eugenio Derbez against everyone, everyone like, yuck, what are you doing? And there you go. And then we sold the movie for $5 million to all those, all the studios that didn't, actually the studio that didn't wanna, give me the theatrical thing, saw it at Sundance. They offered 4.5, and I said no to them. And so that was my very, very wonderful experience. I don't want to take a long time, but it's never been the same. The road is tough, but I think independent is the way to go. I have more to say once everyone talks.
Yeah, no, but thank you. That's beautiful. I think you touched on a lot of great stepping stones that we'll dive into, whether it's casting and specific financing and outside of the territory. But let's keep going, and we'll keep tabs on this, and we'll dive into the weeds after.
Sure.
Marvin, please go ahead.
So specific question is a project that was made outside the system, right?
Yeah, something that you feel was beyond the system, and one tip from that experience that you could throw out right now to filmmakers out there.
Well, everything I did up until Gentified, everything and Gentified was so Gentified was a digital series that was financed by Macro. And they gave the whole budget. It was $100,000. They asked me and Linda Yvette Chavez to write this thing, and I came to them with the concept, very, very loose idea of a web series that was an anthology set in Boyle Heights, dealing with a lot of characters dealing with gentrification, gentrification, and all that. And then they were like, "Yeah, let's do that." And I was like, "Okay, I got to go figure this out now." And so me and Linda got together, and we were able to craft out the web series and wrote it out. And that was very much like the easiest thing I had done at that point, because it was for me at that point, I was like, $100,000, holy shit. That's why we wrote so many goddamn characters in it. Because I thought, I was like, oh my God, I have I can write to the moon. I didn't know how little money that really was. And because up to that point, I had done about 200 different shorts, sketch comedy, web series, working in digital content at different YouTube networks and doing branded content. And so all of that was my background. And I mean, we were doing videos where I was cranking out 10 pieces of content in a day for $5,000. And that was how I cut my teeth. And so all of that was me just working outside the system and generating content and generating, for me, building up my reel, building up my network, building up my craft, practicing, so that when the opportunity for Gentified, when Macro, this company, brand new company, is like, yo, we want to make elevated digital series. Do you have anything? I was one of the people that they were going to, and two, I had something that I could throw in, and I wrote to, for me, the intention of Gentified was to make a good web series. There was no intention of going to make a TV show. They mentioned at one point, yeah, maybe we can turn this, if it does well, we can try to sell it as a TV show. And I was like, yeah, people say that shit all the time. I just want to make a good web series. And at that point, Sundance hadn't even, we finished the web series, we did not have distribution for it. So they were just financing the production, and then we were gonna go out to find distribution for it. And at that time, there was all these short form distributors, Full Screen and YouTube Red, all these places that don't exist anymore. And we were like, let's just make it and we'll go take it to them. And so because I knew that was the goal, what we did first, before I cut any of the episodes, I cut a trailer for the digital series. Because I had shot all these fake trailers before Gentified, I knew how to put a trailer together. And so me and Linda, as we wrote the series, we were flagging all the trailer moments and all the different, I had the song in my head of what the trailer was gonna be, because I knew the plan was gonna be, I'm gonna drop a trailer, I know how to run numbers, I know how to just create viral content. That's what had been my bread and butter up to that point. And I got America Ferrera on. It's gonna be we're gonna do that. And so that's what happened. It got all these views. And then TV networks are calling Macro, asking is this a TV show? And we're like, oh yeah, sure. So then we were in this weird little in-between world where all the short form places that we intended to take it to couldn't see it. They weren't interested because there was no influencers in it. Basically, too many Mexicans. And all the TV places were like, this is cool, but we don't do short form. So come back when you got a TV project, a TV pitch. So we just kept working on it. And in the time that we were developing what the half-hour version of the show would look like, and I'm still editing the episodes, they macro submitted us to Sundance because it was the first time that they took submissions for digital series. And I don't even know if they do that anymore. But it was the first year that they opened it up to submissions, and they told me that they were going to do it. But I was like, yeah, whatever. Like for me, the intention was I'm going to make a good web series and then practice, and then and then I'm going to make a movie, and that'll be the thing that goes to Sundance. And we kind of skipped all that because the series got into Sundance, and we premiered it there, and then we sold it. And so all of that was like, because we shot it and we just made the damn thing, we got some money, we and the big tip, I guess if I could share a tip, is we wrote 8 episodes, and like a few weeks before production, I almost had a heart attack, and I was like, we gotta cut one because there's no way I can get this done. And I should have cut like at least 2 to 3 more episodes because that was the most insane shoot of my life. And just get a producer that can walk you through the schedule. If you haven't done it, if you haven't shot that, for me, that was like the first time I'd ever shot longer than 2 days. So it was like a 10-day production, and it was insanity. And I should have cut at least 1 more episode. So that's to give myself breathing room and to be able to cover everything the way I wanted to. But still, we got it done. We got it to Sundance, so it worked out fine. But yeah.
I love that, and I love that instead of trying to go sell a TV show, you just made a series. You made a digital series, and that led to the show. I think that's in the spirit too of like, how do we go around the gatekeepers? Alonso, tell us your project and your tip.
It kind of sucks going after these guys. I have nothing really, it's not that fancy. And I apologize for my English. It doesn't work really well after 2 p.m. So I think that the biggest blessing in my life is that I don't know what the system is. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean. And I don't mean that because I think that's cool. I just genuinely don't know. I attended this panel hoping to learn what the system was. And so, you know how they say ignorance is bliss. So I feel like the biggest somewhat successes I've had in my life is because I put myself in situations that any human being with intelligence wouldn't put himself into. And then I found myself stuck, and then I have to figure out a way to come out of it. And so that just to say, like, for this project, specifically the Wing Walker, well, I didn't go to film school. So that to me, I've always felt broken about it. I felt like I wasn't good enough because I didn't understand, like, when I don't want to say something that kills my career, but I don't understand a lot of things that are going on set when I started. And you kind of learn it. There's a system that happens, and you can learn it as you're working on it. So I guess my first tip is, like, don't be afraid if you don't know the system. Sometimes that's better, because then you bring something that people are afraid to do. And probably if I knew the system, I wouldn't do it myself. And so and I ramble a lot, so if I didn't answer your question at the end, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's
Okay.
great.
And so without knowing the system, you know, I did my first share of short films. That was my film school. I shot from $50 to $500,000 short films. And again, by accident. And so, because I wrote something that nobody in their right mind would write for a short film, but somehow it ended up happening. But the Wing Walker is a film that I spent 10 years of my life trying to get made. Finally, after getting a manager and all that stuff, I started being, you know, thrown into circumstances where you kind of understand that there is a system and there's ways to do things, and there's ways that people don't like to do things. And so, you know, because I was able to shoot from, like, these guys in all different budgets and backgrounds, I've never been afraid of trying to do something that doesn't necessarily support it by any system. And so with Wing Walker, it was this movie that I thought was very relevant. I still think is relevant. It's about immigration as well. And we went around town trying to get money for it. At some point, the late and the great John Singleton was attached to produce this movie. And he was like, you need $25 million to make this movie. And I was like, all right. And then he said 11 million. And then it went to like 3 and then 1. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'll do a rewrite and try to do whatever it takes to get it made. So there was this current of a system telling me, like, that this movie, like all movies, they're not supposed to get made. You know, it's a miracle that they even happen. Any of you guys, so I applaud everybody here that's doing the work. But for this one, you know, they go like, you need a famous actor, you need a name to get this going, you need this, you need that. Now, the script was a little crazy. It was like 50 some locations. which I don't recommend. Uh, and then I went around town pitching the movie, and I remember I had my little elevator pitch and the 5-minute pitch and the 10-minute pitch and the 30-minute pitch. I had like every pitch in the world, but it was a great pitch, I thought, and never got it done. But I remember when the first thing they asked me, like, who's your actor? And I was like, I don't want to say my friend's name, but when I said his name, everybody was just looked down like, and who's that guy? I'm like, well, he's a human being. What do you mean? And so we never got it made. So if he ever sees this, thank you for nothing. But no, he ended up being in the movie and he did great. Anyway, so that was a big hurdle for us. And then it was a point where nobody wanted to make it. And then if you ever see the movie, you know, it goes into airports and shooting inside airplanes, and there's a whale, the movie, and it's just very like an odyssey. So everybody would look at it, I'm like, you're crazy, like nobody's gonna get this movie made. You can't shoot it for 25, and so I love being in that position. I like when people say no. I don't know why. I'm trying to figure it out, but I was like, there must be a way to do this. And what I found quickly was like, I wasn't gonna get the Diego Lunas of the world or the Oscar Isaacs or all those guys. And so I was kind of stuck. But that kind of opened the door to like, what are we not looking into Mexico? I'm Mexican from Tampico, Tamaulipas. Nobody there from here? Anyways. And so that's how we ended up landing Omar Chaparro, which is a very well-known Mexican actor. He's great. And kind of like with Patty, like when I said Omar Chaparro for the lead role of a dramatic movie, for people that don't know him, he's a comedian actor. Everybody, instead of jumping towards it necessarily, was like the same reaction, is that you're insane, that nobody's gonna watch that movie. And I was like, that's a good indicator that this is gonna happen. So I think, sometimes it's that way. And so then the other point that my advice is like to look elsewhere, like don't ever stop looking. People, we're here in LA, but it's just like Mexico almost. Like, or any other country you can go and get those avenues. So the movie ended up being funded because of Mar's name through a Mexican production company who were crazy enough to try to get this movie done. And as far as the shooting, when you're in a situation like that, I remember they ended up setting for like a $3 million budget from originally being 11. And everybody's looking at me like, you can't pull that off. And I remember just kind of second guessing myself as if I could pull that off. And it was the last meeting on a Zoom, and everybody's on this screen, and there was like 10 people. I didn't know who they were. And it was supposed to be the 11 million. And then and it was like an 8-week shoot. And they, like literally on the screen, I was like, my mom already lit the candles and had the saints upside down, and she's like texting me, how did it go? And then I remember the producer goes like, well, we can start on October 11. It was like September. And then he said, but just so you know, very quickly, it's not gonna be 11 million, we have 3, and it's not 8 weeks, it's gonna be 6. You can say yes or no harm, no foul. Like on the spot, no heads up, nothing. And I was like, 11 million. I was like, that's amazing. My first movie is gonna be that. And I just remember those 10 seconds where everybody was just looking at me to say yes or no, thinking like, well, there's this system that is telling me there's a different system now. There's $3 million. And I happened to have read Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey around that time. There's a great chapter there that talks about, sometimes you just gotta jump. And he shares a story about how he got Dallas Buyers Club made. It was supposed to be 7 million. He had 3. The director wanted out. And then he said, I'm gonna show up on Monday to work. We have $3 million and we're gonna do the best movie we can with $3 million. And I just remember thinking that in that particular moment, all I can do is show up on Monday and try to get the best movie I can for $3 million. And it helped out a lot that it was shot in Mexico primarily, because we like to bend the rules a little bit, and if there's any. And so it was just a magical thing to being in that situation where like there's like questionable permits, and like, where can I shoot there but not there? I'm like, what do you mean? So there's a permit. It's a half permit. I was like, what is a half permit? so and then he was like, they're trying to get all these actors and contracts. And I was like, just give me their phone number. And I called each actor. And I almost became like the casting director because all these wanted to go through the route of like, let's put an offer. And I'm like, do you have his phone number? I remember I called these actors and I was like, where are you? It's like, I'm putting my dog down. I'm like, I don't know if this is a good time to call you about this. So we got the actors and then it started going. And then in the end, without all this rambling, was like, the DP was from the States. People didn't speak the same language. So they had like a translator. And he ended up shooting like I was carrying lights. We were chased by the cartel. It was amazing. And what I found with those experiences was that things happen for a reason. And the movie ends up being what I think better than if I had the $11 million. And right. We were constantly told we couldn't shoot there because it's in Tijuana and it's very dangerous. And we just trying to like not adhere to this system that is telling us like, this is crazy, you can't do this. Yes, you can find a way. We shot inside a prison that the day we went to shoot, there was a big couple that head there and there was gonna be a shooting and we had to come the next day. It was awesome, it was great.
Well, let's unpack this because this is amazing. I feel like you've told us already a lot of incredible tips that I think we need to break down even further, right? Because feel like, because I feel like in many ways what you're saying too is if you wait, it's just not gonna happen, right? If you wait for the amount of money that you want or the schedule that you want or even the actor that you want. I think something really interesting with Omar Chaparro, who's amazing, is he's not who you would expect to necessarily be in more of a drama. He's a comedian, and yet he's so good in the film. So sometimes it also becomes, who can you cast? Because if you go after a certain cast, you might get stuck in the chicken and egg game of like, you can't get financing without the cast. You can't get the cast without financing. But if you have an action movie and you're trying to get Liam Neeson, you might be sitting there trying to get him for years and your movie never goes. But if you can find an actor that maybe isn't in that genre, but is a great actor that's looking for a film like that, that's a way to sidestep some of the system and find someone that still has value and can still get the financing. In your case, he unlocked the film, but that isn't the typical actor that the system would say needs to be in that kind of film.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's right. And to me, those 10 seconds where I thought about maybe not doing the movie, what it came through in my mind was like, if I say no right now, this thing will never get made. And I remember just feeling like it was a domino, chips falling. Like you lose the actor, then you lose this, then the time frame goes, like then something happens. And so generally, like my advice, whoever asked me, not a lot of people asked me, but if I had one, was to just do it, for as cliche as that sound. And there's always a way. And sometimes people fear is like the worst, is the killer of dreams.
Yeah.
And so when you have that fear, it's very easy the easy thing is to walk away. I've done it. I try not to do it. But with this film, what I found is like in those moments, I think the darkest treasures are found. The brightest treasures are found in the darkest places. And you go and do that. And then you put yourself in that situation. No matter what the system is telling you, like we heard this movie is not going to be a box office success. Nobody is interested in seeing Omar in this role. Immigration is being there, done that. There's 100 million movies of immigration. And I thought I had something that was a little different from it. That was not as, it was a movie that I thought I haven't seen. And I think that's when you find that little nugget of finding that you fight for it. And that's just what I did. And along the way, we kind of created our own little system where the DP will never work with me again. But it got done, and so that's all. That's kind of like what I have to say.
I'd love to point.
I love it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to point out a couple things. You said the whole not knowing the system, I think, is such an incredible tip. Because the moment you said that, I remember the first time I went in to pitch to Macro with Hentified, and I was going in to pitch Charles King, and I Googled him, and like I remember, I was like, oh, Charles King, he was a partner at WME, and I saw his whole bio, and I was like, okay, but like because I worked in YouTube for years, and I didn't know, I had not worked in TV or film or any of this, I was so outside of it that it just didn't mean anything to me. I like didn't understand what being a partner at WME meant. and like that he was starting this new like it just so like the fear of going in, like just there wasn't that fear going in. I came in and being able to just pitch. I'm like, here's the thing that I want to make and I would like to make, and I feel like that you saying that really reminds me of like how often that ignorance is bliss has worked to my advantage of being able to be like, I'm just trying to make this thing. And what I feel like I've noticed is often is like what you're talking about and what everybody I think is talking about is like when you become the moving train, like it's like you can go around knocking on all the fucking doors trying to get people to pay attention, but like when all of a sudden you start doing it and not waiting for anybody, all of a sudden that's when everybody starts showing up because they want to be like, oh, this fool's not waiting, let me hop on this train, like this thing looks like it's going somewhere, and that momentum really just it builds and builds and builds. And so I feel like that's something that I would really highly recommend that I hope you take away from all these stories, is to just be that moving train and build that momentum.
I think that's a great point. I'll say something real brief too, but I think to try and get to some of those hacks and some of those tips, if you're like in my case, I've done kind of much larger indie films, from 20 million to 5 million to $500,000. And the last one I did was more the latter, this kind of very, very raw film set in a volcano in Ecuador, shot with an indigenous community. And it was like, no one's going to finance that. So how are we going to go out and make that? And I think that in that case, and to your point, something I learned is that if you sit around and look for that angel investor, that's basically what a studio is, where a studio can just come and write a check, you're probably going to be waiting forever. And so the kind of films that are beyond the system usually are a lot of investors that come together. And if you can create the illusion of first money in, that goes a long way. So you don't just go and say, here's my deck, here's my script, I need money. If you can go and say, here's my deck, here's my script, and I've got 10% of the budget, all of a sudden the investor who wants to be last money in, first money out goes, oh, the train is moving. This is more real. And that's not to say like you have a bunch of money you can put into the film. I certainly didn't. But there's things you can do, whether it's crowdfunding, whether it's trying to get a loan. A very indie technique is credit cards. Like you can take, and it sounds crazy and it's a risk, but you can take a card that's like 18 months interest free, and then you can, at the end of that, transfer the balance to a 12-month interest free card. Yeah. No, and it's true.
Oh yeah, punk rock, I love it.
No, but you basically have 2.5 to 3 years of money that as long as you make the minimum payments, you don't have to pay back for 3 years, and you don't have to spend, and you shouldn't spend until you have all the budget. But all of a sudden, if you're doing a $500,000 film, you might be able to get $50,000 through a mixture of those things. And you go to an investor, and all of a sudden your project is ahead because it already has some financing. Even though you haven't spent a cent, you've just set up a system that makes it look like the money is already coming in. Other things like that. I mean, I think let's talk also about not actual cash, but soft sweat equity and soft equity. This idea of like what, and Patricia, maybe you can talk to this. Were there any kind of not only favors, but in time investments, whether it was time or equipment or post facilities that you could tap into to make a film beyond the system that wasn't cash, but that was as valuable as cash?
Yeah, of course. We always use everything, every friend, every relationship, every favor that you can pull. But, I think one thing that we should talk about is the power of a good script, because I think that's what really gets the movie made, or the movie, exist. Beyond just making it, it makes everything easier. If you have a good script, you don't need to convince people that you're gonna make a good movie. It's already kind of there. So, one of the things that I highly recommend to independent filmmakers like myself is to have a good script, to work on the script, and that doesn't really necessarily cost. If you have a partner writer, if you write yourself, that's something you can be doing as a way to keep your career and one day be able to make it. If it's good, they will it will get financed for sure. It doesn't matter how it will happen. So I would say that's something that's important as a tip.
Love it. Love it.
I mean, I want to piggyback on that and like kind of unpack that even more, because one of the things you're so right, like getting a good script, and one of the ways that the process for me to make the script stronger is I need to hear it out loud. And so I highly recommend, especially right now, you're in LA, there's a lot of actors that are kicking it right now. Do a table read. Like if you have a script that you're trying to, and you want to hear it, like get it better, do a table read, get people together, especially if you're trying to get people to hear your script. Like what a great way, like, oh, we're going to do it this night. It's on Tuesday, come through, you can hear it out loud. And then you can actually, one, for yourself, hear what's working, what's not working. You'll know inherently, you'll feel it in the room. It's different from reading it. And two, then you can invite whoever you respect, the people that you trust, to come listen to it and give you feedback and be able to workshop the script that way. So that's just one practical thing that I know I learned from, like Lena Waithe used to run like a table read series. And so we would start doing that, trying to read out the scripts and inviting friends and getting all, and what that means is being humble enough to ask for help. Being humble enough to ask your community for help, to be able to include them a bit in the process, and to trust that and you don't have to take every note, but being able to kind of just hear. If you hear a lot of the same note coming from a lot of different people, then maybe you need to look at that. So yeah, that's just one.
I love that that's
tip.
also making it real. Like when you have a table of actors reading the words, this movie starts to become real. And that's, I think, the way to kind of motivate people to get behind you. Go ahead.
And I want to say one more thing, which is, the system is not the best place to make movies, I feel. I don't think that we should see independent as, how to make an independent movie so you can then break into the movies. No, I think independent movies are the place where you have creative freedom, where you can make really good movies, where you don't really suffer that much, believe it or not. Even if you have less money, you have your freedom, which is a very different feeling. So I would say that independent movies, we need to seek them despite having the opportunity to work for the system. I think they're really valuable in themselves.
100%.
I'll just say something very quick, because something he said, everybody wants to have the best production designer, the best casting director, the best actors, and then have a lot of friends that remain frozen in time, waiting for that. And I learned something doing my movies, that when I brought up some names that I was, you dream to work, the dream was a nightmare, like it wasn't gonna happen. And so you need to open your mind and trust new people. Sometimes we complain like, oh, they don't hire me because I don't have this, I don't have that. You don't wanna become the person that doesn't hire you. And so, for example, I was chasing this production designer for a long time, and he said yes, and then he ended up saying no. And I remember I was like, well, that's a big position. And somebody brought up this kid from Mexico. His name is Elmer Figueroa. Not Chayanne, the actor, that's his name too. And I remember, I'll tell you this story because he had no credits. The movie was huge for somebody like, well, it was even though it was like 3 million, when you see it, when you saw it, it looks a little bigger. It's a lot of locations.
It's amazing. Everyone should see it. It looks a lot bigger than 3 million.
Yeah, thank you. And then, so I remember I called this guy, and I'm not the smart person in any room, but I follow my gut feeling. And most of the time it gets me out of trouble. And I called this guy out of nowhere, and I just called him. And I remember I could hear like he was in a club or something. And I said, are you Elmer? And he's like, yeah, who's this? And I said, I got your name thrown by this guy. Aren't you a production designer? He's like, on the weekends. And I was like, all right, but I have to. And he did something strange. And I said, hey, can you talk? And he literally said this, I'm hammered on Bacardi. You should call me tomorrow, and hung up. And I remember I looked at the phone and I said, that's my guy. Like, I have to hire that guy. I have to hire him. I don't care about anybody else. If somebody tells you here's hammer on Bacardi, I want to work with that guy.
I love it. Remember, we've got tacos and drinks after this. So there might be someone hammered on tequila or something that might be your guy or girl.
Yeah. So
for your next film.
The moral of the story for me, and he turned out to be the person who saved the movie. there was a lot of people quitting. Checks were not coming in because it was just kind of like a chaotic shoot. And the guy would just not leave. And when his crew didn't show up, he was, sticking everything by himself, by his hand. He would call me like, if it wasn't you, I would quit like 3 weeks ago. And he stood there and he never left. And he did miracles with that. And nobody would hire him. And so right now he became a little more successful with this film. And there's a lot of positions like that in my movie where the system was telling me like, how are you going to make this movie that has like 2 different airports, the Pacific Ocean, the desert, this, whatever, and you need a big production guy, you need this and these crazy names and these editors. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And let's find the guys who are hammered on Bacardi or all the positions, and we can do those. And it's surprising with the right motivation, the people step up, and the system will try to tell you go that way. And I think if we were waiting for those systematic things, it was just not gonna be, or it was gonna be worse. These really famous guys come and they look that the AC is not working and leaking because our production office is in the back of a Glendale church, and they're gonna be like, oh, this is not me. Like, I can't work like this. And you embrace the people that see that and go like, let's go to war and let's finish this. So that's something to
I think that's a great point, and I think we are in a time where a lot of people are unemployed and a lot of people are looking to do things, and to get people that are the right people that have the right passion is the right way to sidestep the system. And it doesn't mean they're working for free. Everyone has to pay their bills. A lot of us have kids. Everyone has, bills to pay, but there are ways where you can pay a little less up front.
I know how to pay him. Just a case of
yeah, exactly.
That was fine.
But there's a way to also they make money as part of the waterfall when you sell the film, and there's a way to structure that's still dignified, and that it becomes an investment where everybody wins. If the movie it helped him in his career, and will continue to. I don't know how much time we have. I don't have a lot of time, but let's talk a little bit more. Marvin, I know you're doing interesting stuff with brands right now. What I love is that you've done a huge studio movie in Alexander, and yet you still have this very scrappy indie spirit. And right now you're trying to monetize brands to help you make something outside the system. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I was at a panel recently. I keep hearing brands are financing things, and I was like, I'm trying to get my next movie going, and it's probably not going to go till next year. And I just need to shoot something before the end of the year or before I jump off a fucking bridge. So I was like, I had an idea last weekend, and I reached out to Eva Longoria. I was like, hey, would you be down to be a part of something like this? And she said, hell yeah. And I was like, okay, if she's down, let me see what can happen. And so I just decided to do something on Tuesday. I dropped it on Instagram and I just shouted. I don't even have a bunch of followers right now. I had to start a whole new account. I deleted my old Instagram last year because I got mad at capitalism, and then the movie was coming out and I was like, I need to fucking have it. So I need to do this. So I got a new account. Anyways, so I sorry. So I posted on it because I was like, let me just reach out and let me just ask for help, legitimately. I was like, let me just see who might be able to help me connect with. I used to do digital branded stuff for a long time, and then I haven't done that in a while. So I was like, let me just reconnect with whoever I think might be able to, that might be interested in this, that might be excited about something like this. And what happened was just so many people started reaching out, different people that are connecting this deck with different brands, and we've already gotten our first couple of passes. This is an idea I had on Sunday, and I already have passes on it, which is fucking awesome how fast this is moving.
The no's
normally I gotta wait
right?
months for a no, you know what I mean? I don't know, maybe it's not just me, but so being able to put it out there and building out and connecting with different folks and reconnecting with folks that I forgot that I was like, oh yeah, you do this, oh my, it's been really nice, and being able to utilize this tool that way. And what I'm finding is that I'm like, oh, there is just this weird momentum that is building just because I basically am creating content already for this thing that doesn't even exist. That I'm like, if this works out, if I get to shoot this, if we make this, now we're pivoting. It was a Dia de Muertos idea that's pivoting into a Christmas idea. And if we can shoot it, then I'm like, cool, the content has started this week. We're already doing it. And I feel like that is part of the the ecosystem and the world building that I think projects need to have. I come from, before I did Gentefied, I worked on the film Dear White People. I worked on around I directed and produced all of the viral campaign to promote that film. They had no marketing money outside of these digital videos that we did. And so I have always been around these projects that are like, we're building a bigger project, but in order to build this project, we need to go straight to the audience and like stop waiting for all these middlemen to tell us whether we can or we can't. When we have direct access to the people, we can just show that there is a proof of audience. And that's how Dear White People got built. That's how Gentefied got built. And now that's why I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna keep doing this again, because after doing Gentefied and after doing my Disney movie, trying to get more Latino stories told, like, I mean, we're all doing this. We're all dealing with the same shit, and it's just all not. It's maybes, and maybe you get into development and you do that shit for years, and you get money getting development. But to actually get something done and out and to the audience and seen, I'm like, yo, like, do we really need? I'm like, I don't need just. There isn't just one way to do this. There isn't just one way to tell story. There isn't just one platform. I have never worked. As myself, I don't know. I can't speak for all of y'all. I've never shot on film other than photography. I've never been around the big Mickey Mouse ears. My degree was in digital filmmaking. So like and while we were in school, I remember we were like advocating, like, teach us film. And like, they didn't want to teach us film because they're like, it's dead. And they're like, this is the future. And like, thank God they did, because it set me up perfectly for YouTube. And so because of, I've always been in the digital realm of it, I'm like, there's just, I don't know, I'm in this place of like, fuck it. I honestly was inspired because I knew that this panel was coming up. I was like, let's see what it looks like if I try to do something a little bit fucking weird and unorthodox, because you know what? They're trying to round up motherfuckers that look like me all over these streets. And so like, I just need to make something, because God knows where we're gonna be in a year, and I wanna shoot now. So I don't know, that's where I'm at, and I hope y'all can take something from that. Please, we need to see your stories. We need to see us out here. It doesn't only have to be on this big ass screen. We need to be out here. We need to be telling our stories, because if representation did not matter, they wouldn't be calling us criminals and rapists and murderers every chance they get. So, just because we're not using that hashtag anymore doesn't mean that's some shit in the past. So these stories do matter, because otherwise then we have kids, little brown girls in Texas that are killing themselves because they think they don't belong here. So this is important work. It's not about us having work. It's not about us getting jobs. It's not about us getting, filling these roles and the 25%. Like, no, it's about the next generation being able to grow up in a world where they see themselves reflected and they know and understand inherently that they belong here, that there's nothing wrong with them. So that's my 2 cents. I hope that inspires y'all to just go make some shit punk rock outside the system.
I love that. I mean, we're starting to wind down here, but to that point, Patricia, maybe let's talk about the mental game, right? We've given some tips. We can continue, obviously, to have this conversation beyond this panel. And your community is here to help you. The DGA is here to help you. I know the DGA helped me with the tiny film that I did when I thought it wouldn't even be something that would qualify. It did. There are resources here. Let's kind of end this with the mental game a little bit. We've all done TV. We've all done kind of bigger projects as well that were part of an ongoing series. Is there a difference when you're doing something that's your voice, if any? Maybe there isn't, but is there anything that changes in your mind when you're doing a project that you know is really your voice? And talk a little bit about that as we kind of bring the panel to an end. What do you tell yourself when you go, I don't care who says no, I just want that one yes. And even if someone doesn't give me that yes, I'm going to say yes and I'm going to make it. What do you tell yourself to do that?
I think the difference is everything. And I personally have felt for years that I have lost that voice because I've been working in the system. I'm a really good soldier. And I just really, really, really miss telling our stories. You know, unfortunately, I've been here for a long time, guys. I started a long time ago, and I learned that you can't make any Latino movies. You know, it's really fucked up, but, you know, it just landed in me that I had to work. So I just take work, and it's really sad. And that's what we need to change. And so that's why I'm calling for like independent movies, because if they don't tell our stories, we have to find a way to tell our stories. I still feel that after 6 movies, my first movie is the best movie I've ever made, because I made it on my own, because I made every decision, because there was no 25 executives telling me what to do. Guys that have no idea what they're doing. You know, I wish they were giving me great ideas, because that's what I want, but it's just about protecting the thing you're doing. And so I spend my life protecting the movie I've been hired to direct. And it's very sad. I'm very, happy and blessed by the fact that I'm working, but I'm not telling our stories. And I really miss that. And I don't know what you asked me, but... No. But what I do know is what I'm looking for, and I am looking for that. And I guess I'm looking for it in the worst moment ever, because not only, they really are out to not make anything. They really are out to eliminate who we are. They eliminate us in every single way. And we have to do something about it. I just don't know what. So at least as filmmakers, maybe we do something. Anyway, I don't know if I answered.
No, but I think you've also touched on this idea of your favorite film being that one where you didn't have 25 executives or producers sitting behind you or telling you what to do. The irony of the system is if you kind of just say, I'm doing it this way, I'm doing it my way, that can then help the system go, oh, this is an interesting film. That can then become your La Misma Luna, which gets you films within the system. But if you try to please the system off the bat, you're going to be like going around in circles trying to please the system, rather than just focusing on what's your voice, what's your project, and then let the system come and hire you. But don't forget to keep that script.
I mean, I have to say that I have a distinction right here, is that I'm a woman. And that's a whole different thing, which, by the way, is worse than being Latino. So we go with a whole other set of rules that I still go through every single day of my life when I'm in the workplace.
And yet here you are. And that's what we love about you too, is that you break through. You've broken through.
That's the thing. Never give up. Right?
Never give up.
That's the key.
Yeah.
You never give up. You continue always fighting, never taking no for an answer, always going forward.
Can I say that?
We've got 1 minute, but please jump in with.
What you just said, never
something.
give up. But I think, and also something that I picked up from every story here was that done is better than perfect. Like, stop waiting for perfect. Stop waiting for the perfect thing, the budget, the equipment, the star. Like, fucking just do it. Get it done. And that is going to keep building that momentum.
I'll just say something that might be really stupid, but when I like the word no, because if you look at backwards, it's on. And so I go like, when they say no, I'm like, it's on. So if you have that mentality, then you go.
On that note, guys, it's on. There's no better time than now. Go tell your stories, go use your voice, step around the system, and we hope some of this was helpful. Thanks for being here, guys. Thank you.